The doctor said my baseball career was through, and I believed him. I knew God could do miracles, but I wasn't at all sure he would do one in my case. I didn't beg him for one. I had enjoyed a wonderful life in baseball, and if God wanted me to go on to something else, I wasn't going to argue with him. My part was to cooperate with the doctors and do all I could to recover from surgery. That meant physical therapy. Without a deltoid muscle, I had lost certain kinds of motion. For example, the doctor told me that it would be really hard for me to reach behind me to my hip pocket and take out my wallet. Through physical therapy, I could retain my shoulder to use other retrain my shoulder to use other muscles. I worked hard with my physical therapist. The workouts were very tiring, and often they seemed pointless. Sometimes I really didn't feel like going. Day by day, though, I made progress. One day, about 5 weeks after surgery, I came home from my therapy workout and found Janice washing the dishes. Hey, I've got something to show you, I said. Watch this. Using my left arm, I slowly reached behind me to my rear pants pocket. I took out my wallet and set it down on the counter. Oh, wow. Janice hopped up and down with excitement. The doctor had said I needed months of rehabilitation before I could take the wallet out of my pocket. That's not all, I said. Watch this. I stepped up into the kitchen area where she could see me clearly. Then, slowly and deliberately, I went through my pitching motion. It felt the way it always had, slower and slower, but essentially the same. Janice stared, tears springing into her eyes. We hugged each other. I can't believe it, she said. That was the day we really began to hope I would pitch again. Pitch? Just a few weeks before, the idea seemed ridiculous. When the Giants called, asking about my plans for spring training, Janice had been annoyed. Why can't they just leave you alone? But after that day, we began to get excited. Was it possible I could come back? Realistically, though, we were getting ahead of ourselves. I had removed my wallet from my back pocket. That was different from pitching Major League Baseball. Sometimes I seemed to make no progress at all. Janice would have to talk to me to get me going. She sometimes had to push me out the door to my therapy sessions. I always felt much better when I came home after workout, though, knowing I'd done what I could. I knew that the odds were against my coming back. My part, I believed, was to do everything possible I could to try with all my might. Then, if I couldn't pitch, God would have other, better things for me to do. Trust in God helped me to work hard and not to worry about the outcome. On January 9, a Monday, I was scheduled to meet with the doctors at the Cleveland Clinic. I looked forward to amazing them. Okay, Dave, one of the doctors said, go through the motions for us. Show us what you can do. First, I performed the motions I knew wouldn't surprise them, like reaching over my head. Then I worked into the motions that I knew would blow them away, like starting with my hands at my side and pushing it straight back, or starting with my hand at my side and lifting it straight out from my body. I got the response I was looking for. Wow, Dave, that's good. That's pretty impressive. But the fun really began after the doctor came in. He didn't say anything until I began pushing my arm straight back from a position at my side. The doctor said, how are you doing that? He came up to me and put his hands on my shoulders. Do it, Dave. So I did it. Do it again. He was feeling my muscles work, trying to understand what was moving my arm. In a low, thinking to himself voice, he said, you must be using your lats. Then he stepped back and stared at me as though he were looking for a trick. He took a chair in the corner of the room, and from then on just sat there, not talking unless someone asked him a question. Another doctor came in. "Well, Dave, how are you doing?" he asked in his booming voice. I said I was doing great and began going through the motions. He started crowing. "You see?" he said to the other doctor. "You see? I told you that you weren't dealing with an ordinary individual here. He's an athlete and they're different." The doctor just sat in his corner saying, "I'm really impressed." We all talked at once, celebrating together. Then came a pause. One doctor looked at the other. "Well," he boomed, "let's get him throwing. What do you think, George? Can he throw?" Throw? All these months I had not so much as picked up a baseball. Never once had I cradled that little white ball in my hand. The doctor had warned me against throwing anything. I hadn't picked up a rock and thrown it against a tree. I hadn't tossed a piece of paper into the basket. I'd done my work out with my little wrist weights. Throw? Throw. The doctor, however, was quite cautious. The humerus bone, he said, was very brittle because of the freezing he'd done to kill the cancer cells. Generally, it took 4 to 6 months for someone's to strengthen bone strength to come back. But my case wasn't general. Nobody had ever tried to throw baseballs 90 miles an hour after having his bone froze. Nor had anyone ever tried to do it with half a deltoid muscle. "So no spring training?" the other doctor said. "You don't think you could go down there and take light workouts?" The doctor thought if I got with all my teammates at spring training, I'd be tempted to say, "Forget the doctors," and let it rip. He was right, too. "Well, maybe he can go for the last week," the other doctor said. "But I don't want him to interrupt his therapy." I just watched and listened as these two great doctors went back and forth over my treatment. Whatever they came up with, I was charged up. For the first time, the doctors were talking as though baseball was a possibility. They finally decided to let me start throwing a football. They felt that it would be less likely to overstress my arm. The doctor gave me a stern warning, though, to pay attention to the way my arm felt. Any little ache you feel could be a hairline fracture. If you feel the slightest pain, you need to quit immediately. If it's a hairline fracture, it'll set you back 6 weeks. But if it breaks, it sets you back a full year. When we'd gone over the details of my training program, one doctor asked the other the big question. "Doctor, if everything goes well and Dave follows his program, when do you think he might be at full strength and ready for competition?" The doctor's answer surprised me. "Sometime in July," he said, "if everything goes well." I left the Cleveland Clinic with enough excitement to pitch the World Series.